Sava Studios presents the Metametheus Project. Graham does the auto edits, but yeah, I mean, it's just a conversation. I saw you advertise, or not advertise, mention your interview with the inspectors, is how you say that?
The Inspectors is the name of the book.
Yeah, the author, right?
Yeah, it's Jared Hunter Rowe, who is the script writer, and then we have David M. Flores, who is the artist. They're both kind of the story architects.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw you mention that, and then only recently was able to like actually go onto YouTube and like see that you have like a bunch of interviews with people. That's wild.
Yeah, I'm at the phase of my I don't know if you call it a brand or a project or whatever you want to call this thing called Comic Book Chronicles that I do. I'm still at the phase where I'm amazed that people want to talk to me. Yourself included. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but I'll take it. In fact, you know what? Not in the near future. I've got an interview that's going up with a two-time Eisner Award winner and a Harvey Award winner, which in the world of comic books is like being an actor with two Oscars and a Golden Globe.
Yeah,
so
that's
I mean that's
wild, man. Congrats.
No, I don't know how I conned him into doing it, but he did it, and you know what? Bless his heart. Bless his heart.
I mean, it's got to be your like genuine enthusiasm, because like your content. So I guess for our few listeners, which I guess will come from all over the place, we've got a weird spread of audience since we don't have a niche. But like you are like about it, like the way you do your content has the kind of like episodic feel that comic books have with releases, because you
Oh,
like
really?
mm-hmm.
I'm episodic?
In the way, because like I guess it's the like the review element you're doing. You're reviewing them as comics, but you're reviewing them as, I guess, issues, right? Like that comes across.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm reviewing them as an idiot first and foremost. But no, what did I say to the Zeo to Hero folks not long ago? Remind me to tell you about that. I want to inform and entertain, I guess, is what I want to do. And I don't know if there's meant to be continuity from one to the next, but I mean the idea, the goal is theoretically to get people to check in with me every morning to see what I'm talking about, whether it's a comic book or whether it's just a graphic novel or something going on, or but yeah, you want to kind of you want to try at least, or I do, to be that fixture in people's lives.
Yeah, it definitely rekindled my like interest in comics. I haven't read much for comic books. My dad actually had a bat cave in the basement when I was like real young.
He had a bat cave in his basement?
And I'm like wall to wall collectible figures, like shelves of different comic books.
See, that's what I'm trying to get going here. I mean, I had it when I lived with my parents. That was what my room was. It was a big action figure thing, and then I got all domesticated and I had to take them down, but then they gave me this, what's basically a big glorified walk-in closet that I shoot in, and I'm putting what I can up here. No disrespect with the glorified walk-in closet comment. My father-in-law built this for me. He's very nice. Shout out to Steve and Merrill. My wife's going to divorce me if I bash her father. No, but yeah, and then I kept all my comics in the closet, which would have been the name of my podcast if I had a podcast, Comics in the Closet. But no, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted. But no, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
But I grew up just as video games started taking off.
Okay.
And like DBZ was making its run on Toonami, so like I took like that kind of energy and went to like the more new nerd stuff.
Oh, you're a neo nerd.
Yeah, I'm technically a second generation. Like when I was like preschool age, I don't remember this, but my mom told me like my brother and I would like watch my dad play through the Samus games, and then we were a little older with the PlayStation, Abe's Odd
Mhm.
World, and like he would task us for remembering like patterns, so we were
Yeah.
like helping him like get through the puzzle games.
Well, how? See, I'm 39. Are you around my age? Or are you a little bit younger than me?
32, so I'm like the younger in
You're a
the
little bit
90s
younger
kid.
than me. Okay. See, I was. Excuse me. We had the from a video game perspective, we got the original Nintendo Entertainment System for Christmas one year, and with the original Super Mario Brothers. Excuse me, and we went from there. We graduated to Super NES, and then we went to Sega, and then I had a PlayStation. But see, I think when video games moved into 3 dimensions, that was too many dimensions for me.
Agreed.
Like I talked to shout out to Kathy Plays on YouTube. I talked to her, and she talked to me about the Mario games when we did our interview. But Super Mario 64 has so much great. It's so beloved and has such a great legacy. I couldn't play Super Mario 64. To me, Mario only moves one way. So it's like, what the heck, man?
Yeah, it was definitely a jump, and because the mechanics weren't as smooth, it made for very fresh. Like you could, when you knew how to do a scroller, and there was so much that was like micro frame timing, you could get really good at.
Mm-hmm.
And the first polygon games just weren't smooth in that way.
Is that what they're called? Polygon games?
Like the way that the characters are like
The
made,
way they're
the
constructed?
models. There we go, the models.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think the one polygon game that I can do is Final Fantasy VII.
Hmm.
That's probably my favorite. Like if you put a gun to my head and say favorite video game of all time, it's Final Fantasy VII.
Nice.
And if you look at the way those characters are built in the at least in the in game mode, they're all angles, man.
Yep.
They're all angles.
But yeah, I mean, that was back to like my full looping all the way back around. Like hearing you talk about it, like reminds me like of the thrill of comic books because we had on an author Todd Black, who's done like a wide range of like series, and like I'm always curious as somebody who like I've got you can't see it in like the little screen, but I've got like a Batman piece over there. I've got the Batman tattoo.
You got a Batman tattoo?
My dad and I got matching ones as
Oh
like a
my
father
gosh.
son thing.
Nice.
But it's like I'm on like just the outside of the comic world because
Yeah, you're
I
on the fringe.
yeah because I've read like the wiki fandoms, like I know a bunch of the lore. I just don't read comics physically. So I'm always curious like what the experience is like because I missed that experience or like haven't dug into it yet.
Right.
And his take was like comic books compared to other forms of medium, it's easier to play with ideas. Because like with a novel, like one, you're just using words,
Hmm.
and two, it's a lot more words. So there's a lot more that needs to be done mechanically to carry the story. You
Yeah.
can't have like scenes as easy, and you can't bend ideas quite so quickly.
You have to say, XYZ is walking across the room and opening the door, whereas in a comic book, you can do that in a panel.
Well, and you don't have to
Yeah.
explain things in a single comic. So right, a book has to like make sense page to page.
Has to be self-contained. Yeah.
Yeah, where a comic you can introduce an idea and like you even as an author you might not know where that's going, and then later issues you like resolve it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the things that's interesting for me in doing interviews and talking because you want to talk to, people who work for Marvel, DC, Image, that kind of stuff. But I also talk to a lot of smaller indie comic creators, and that it's always interesting to sort of hear what their process is and how that kind of evolves as time goes on, or at least how different ones are different.
So how did you get into comics?
Okay.
Your origin story.
Oh God. My origin story. Well, it's superheroes are a great, and I said this somewhere. Superheroes are a great gateway drug into comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And my gateway drug into comics was the 1966 Batman TV show with Adam West and Burt
Mm.
Ward.
Okay.
If you look behind me, well, you can't see it, but there's an autographed picture from Burt Ward back on my wall in each of my videos. Um, and I think I mean, the show was 30 years old, 40 years old by the time I saw it. But I mean, it blew me away with the colors and the dynamic acting style. Holy this and that,
Mm-hmm.
and just, everything was so over the top. It was perfect. And I guess still is perfectly geared for the mind and attention span of a child. And then, one day I'm walking with my mother in a Jewel Osco in Orland Park, Illinois, and it's a supermarket, and they don't have these at grocery stores anymore, which breaks my heart. But it's a rack of comic books
Mm.
sitting there, and I believe the number it's Batman 482 is the issue
Left an impression.
by Doug Monk and drawn by Jim Aparo. And it was just that's the thing I know from TV. So I picked it up and I started flipping through it, and I think initially my interest in comics was very I guess what today you would call IP oriented. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
the Batman was there, the Ninja Turtles were there, sometimes the Ghostbusters were there, et cetera, et cetera. But as I've grown older, I've really started to appreciate kind of, I don't want to say how the sausage is made in terms of how the art form of comics, because I don't I've never made a comic book, I've never written one. God help me, I can't draw, but it's just I've become more and more fascinated with the art form as opposed to, I need to see what Batman's doing now.
Mm. Yeah.
So my origin story is very much tied to Batman and superheroes and whatnot. And then as I grew up, I definitely don't want to say I matured, but I guess my tastes evolved, so to speak.
Your palate matured.
There you go, my palate, my palate. Speaking of which, we're on YouTube, right? People can see that I'm drinking wine and coffee at the same time.
I mean, one of the recent episodes, I don't know if it's uploaded yet. It might be the one we do on Norse mythology, which goes up later this month. But
Okay.
but Matt's drinking mead we made out of a jar of honey that we used
Oh,
for the mead. Just,
nice, nice.
which I guess if you
No,
don't know what
I
mead is, it probably just looks like he's drinking juice out of a honey jar. But
doesn't
spoilers.
just say he's drinking juice. No, you know what? I didn't know I've watched your episodes, so I knew I didn't. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure what to expect. So I've got
Neither
one
am
to
I.
caffeinate, I've got one to hydrate, and I've got one to inebriate. So whatever kind of guy you need, man, I'm here. We are gonna cast the hell out of this pod. Let me tell you.
But yeah, yeah, it's the emergence of
I
things
totally
like
just derailed you, didn't I?
okay, there's no derailing with our thing. That's the thing is we have no. We're curious and we're foolish. That's basically the premise, and we like conversations. Um, but something with like the comic stuff is, I think, the independent sphere is getting. It kind of had a boom in the early days, not early days, but like the heydays of the Kickstarter projects.
Mm-hmm.
I ironically was part of the board game trend. I helped
Okay.
market and was involved in the board game community with Kickstarter. But like that, like independent ability to create stuff. But now,
Yeah.
not only do we have like the Marvel and DC like blockbuster movies in a way that like
Mm-hmm.
the cartoons were different because the cartoons just happened to be there and they felt very comic bookish. So
Did
they
it?
weren't for everybody.
You talking about like the '90s cartoons,
Yeah, because like
like your Batman the animated series, your X-Men, your Spider-Man, that kind of stuff?
you're a Mark Hamill Joker.
There it is.
Go put that in there because I know one of the things that's going to get brought up in this conversation. But it's it's weird for me being even like as the younger end of the '90s kid
Yeah.
group, where like comic books and video games and Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy and sci-fi was all like ew, like all the way up until like early high school, and
Hmm.
then like just like for well yeah I guess like basically until 2008 to 2012 all of a sudden it started switching. Video games started being like mainly because of first person shooters, but like video
Yeah.
games started being cool, and then comics were cool, and now recently tabletop stuff with Dungeons and Dragons, like having a TV show and movies, and it's wild to see.
It feels like there was a shift at some point, and I don't know. You probably know more about when the shift happened than I do. In fact, you might have just described it between that 2008 2012 period. But yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I went to high school between 1999 and 2003, and I would have, you know, Batman comic books with me in my backpack, and I would have them out on the table sometimes, and I'd be flipping through them. But it would be kind of one of those things where don't don't let them see what you're looking at. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there was I don't want to say there was a shame factor involved, but you were kind of you were kind of on the down low in terms of geekdom. And then nowadays I don't know if it has to do with the explosion of just mass media being what it is, and the fact that and the expansion of the internet, and the fact that we are such a global village now, and the fact that people who have interests, the similar interests from all over the world can come together and interact and all that stuff. But yeah, the stigma is largely gone. I mean, I'm sitting in front of a bunch of Power Rangers right now, and I'm almost 40 freaking years old, and I never would have guessed.
Like it's considered like a grown man investment the same way like a Lamborghini is to get like a first edition Charizard. Like what the
Yeah.
fuck? When did
You know what? I don't know, man, but I'm here for it. I am here for it. That's right up. So you know what? Sometimes I think I was born in the wrong era, but you know what? As it turns out, maybe I came around at just the right time.
Yeah, because
You
now
know
you're
what?
now you're an adult with adult money to enjoy this
Well,
wave.
I'm an adult with some money. Let's not let's
Well,
not let's not say I have too much money.
contemporary adult money with with
There you
everything
go.
that's going with everything that's going on.
Exactly,
It's
exactly.
whatever money you have is yours,
Mm,
as it were.
mm, sort of.
Yeah, yeah,
Ask my wife about that.
right. But yeah, it's been such a weird cultural shift. I I want okay, so Spawn was the only comic I got like into.
Really?
Yeah, because like I had seen all the superheroes, and then my dad had a Spawn comic laying around. I was like, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, he's like." It was my first introduction that comics weren't about heroes. Like
Yeah.
you could have comics that were just stories, and
I think that's a big perception that people have to this day because of the dominance of superheroes in not just comics, obviously, but in media. Comic book superheroes, blah blah blah. But yeah, so Spawn. All right, you're a Spawn guy.
that's the only comic book where I bought like several issues, read through them. Um, I have fond memories of the movie, but the movie was terrible. I hope if they keep doing these freaking reboots and whatever, they need to do Spawn justice. Like
See,
do it
I know next to nothing about Spawn, but even knowing the reputation that Spawn has, I'm shocked that it hasn't happened already.
right. Like
I mean, you'd think they would just be
Winnie the
milking
Pooh
it for all it's worth. You know
got
what I
like a
mean?
intense horror movie before they did a Spawn like
Yeah, yeah.
because I bought the DVD. No, I had the DVD from when I was younger, and I found it when we were moving, and I rewatched it. And I was like, oh, this is not a good movie. Like it's as a Spawn fan, it's fun that there is a movie
Yeah,
because it's the IP thing, right? It's like, oh, I like these characters, but the actual
exactly.
movie, rough.
Who's in the movie? The movie was made in what, 90, mid 90s?
I couldn't tell you. I'm so bad with actors, like
I
background
think
names.
it was mid 90s. I can picture it in my head, but
It had to be
I'm not sure where.
Yeah, I think it had to be early '90s because it's just as the special, like those kind of special effects started getting big.
1997. That's when
Oh,
it was
really?
made.
That late?
Oh yeah. Okay, here we got. We got John Leguizamo as Violator. Now, John Leguizamo, he was also Luigi in the Super Mario Brothers movie. So that, he's two for two in that sense.
That was a weird
Martin
one too.
Sheen. Martin Sheen as Jason Wynn. Now, did you ever see The West Wing?
Mm-mm.
Okay, he was the president on The West Wing. My wife is upstairs. Her ears are tingling because I mentioned Martin Sheen in The West Wing, and then Michael Jai White as Spawn himself. Okay,
It was a good
okay,
cast. Like
it sounds like a good cast.
it just,
See, now I have to watch it for my stuff.
yeah. Maybe it was my expectations from how I remembered it being so different from how it actually is.
Mhm.
But
How
uh,
did you collect Spawn when you were like pre high school? Is that when you were
yeah, so it was
okay?
like middle school age.
Middle
Partly
school,
because
okay,
like somehow my parents were into the Aliens movies.
okay,
So they bought me Aliens action figures, and like
really,
as a middle schooler, like I had Spawn demons, Spawn action figures,
yeah,
Aliens. Like I had these. Everyone else had like cheesy like heroes, and I had these monstrosities for like action
yeah.
figures. I was,
Hey, you that was the 90s, man. Things were coming out of the 80s. Things were a little bit darker, I
yeah,
guess. A
that
little bit
grind, that
darker in that
grunge.
sense. Exactly, the grunge effect.
Although
Mm.
I figure we'll segue into it because we already mentioned something about it, and now we're on to the movies. And in contrast to the griminess of the rest of the '90s culture, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Yes, yes.
Because we just recently passed the 25th anniversary. I didn't realize, like, I didn't even put the numbers together when it was like 25th anniversary. Like, oh, okay. Like, it came out in 1999. I was like, for some reason, I thought it came out later than that.
Did it? What was the May 19th, 1999? Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I thought it was early 2000s for some reason.
well, I mean that's when the episode 2 came out in 2002, I believe, and then you had the episode 3 in 2000. So it was very much a late 90s, early 2000s
Yeah, that,
thing.
that
So
whole thing just like blends, right? The first couple years of the 2000s are
uh,
just 90s extended.
I guess, yeah, but yeah, 25 years of the freaking Phantom Menace, and I said this on a video recently. It's 25 years of fanboy disappointment and rage.
Yeah, it was not well received. I was pretty well, yeah,
I was gonna
obviously.
say, how old were you when it came out?
Yeah, I was super young, which is that's what I think. It's like I remember like watching it because let's see, two, I already said my age, so I can date myself. That'd be why can
You
I
were
not
you were.
math now?
Well, I was 14. So you're 32. I'm 39. That puts you. You're an elementary school aged kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So you probably you saw it with a whole different set of eyes than I did.
But I came from a nerd family, so I'd seen the original Star Wars, and like it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. And the critics that defended it, their point was there was Star Wars moments, and the Star Wars moments are still to this day some of the most iconic cinema moments.
Hmm.
But the movie itself didn't feel Star Wars
Well, you know the
compared to the original trilogy.
no. I mean, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. I think. I mean, first of all, well, the original Star Wars movie was written and directed by George Lucas. So I think that when with Return of the Jedi and The Empire Strikes Back, we had different directors. We had Lawrence Kasdan was in there helping with the writing. I think there were maybe a couple other different writers, but it wasn't just George on Empire and Jedi. Um, and I think that, but that with that original Star Wars movie especially, it was such a melting pot of different creative voices and different, so many different people had fingerprints on it besides George. I call him George because I know him. Um, we, because he wasn't a Titan at that point. He had done American Graffiti in I think 1970. Well, in the early 70s. So, he was a known entity with a successful movie under his belt, but he wasn't George Lucas, the titan of the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
So, he was in the director's chair, but, I think he had to divert a lot of the creative focus and efforts to other people. You had the folks at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, who were doing the special effects and stuff like that. You had Ralph McQuarrie, who was the famous concept artist who, really shaped a lot of the visual elements that we know and love. You had various, costume designers and puppeteers. They were all in there kind of doing their thing. It was a big happy accident lightning in a bottle movie that came around at just the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you compare that to the Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace. I think George Lucas is at his core a great storyteller, but I think that he also is a guy that considers himself a pioneer of special effects.
Yeah, I mean that was
And
one of the big thing about that
yeah,
movie was like unveiling what Lucasfilms can do now.
yeah, and I think that he thought everybody was going to be just dazzled with special effects.
And then The
I
Matrix
think
crushed them in the awards.
Yes, he thought they were going to be blown away with his CGI waterfalls and with Jar Jar Binks and Watto, I believe.
Although, ironically, I think it's because it was too good. You didn't like, even for its time, it didn't feel as cheesy. The special effects were pretty smooth, so I don't think like as a watcher you picked up on the special effects as much.
No, not as much. I think Attack of the Clones, the sequel, is actually worse than the Phantom Menace as far as CGI effects are concerned. But I think that he was. I think he thought we all were going to be blown away. I think he thought it was going to be like Jurassic Park, or like you mentioned, The Matrix. I think he thought we all were going to go, oh my god, I can't believe what the movie did. And so maybe he kind of, I don't know if he de-emphasized the story, but I think that was what made him, because it's the first chapter of a story. What's the job of a first chapter of a story? To introduce the characters. And I think that he thought, because this first chapter was a little bit story light, he could lean on the special effects a little bit more, and that didn't work for people.
Well, and there's it's so much easier to defend in hindsight because like part of the
yes,
thing is it felt so different because even compared to the things going on at the time, like I said with the grime and the grunge and like
hmm
it's competitive. The Matrix, even the original trilogy, all had that more like industrial taste to it. And instead, we're on Naboo, this beautiful planet, and
hmm
like everything's pristine, and you have like these silly Gungan characters, and like it was just a much lighter and brighter feel. Even Tatooine is just sunshine everywhere.
yeah.
You're not
The
stuck inside
original
buildings.
the original Star Wars movie. I don't know if I don't know where this term originated, but they said it looked like a used universe.
Yeah.
It looked like a universe that people lived in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you look at the Phantom Menace, and you're right. Even on Tatooine, this desert planet that we've seen so much before, it all looks very clean. It all looks
But
very sanitized.
that canonically makes sense. That's the thing. Is like when you put it within
Does
the
it?
story. Yeah, because like this is before the Empire like bullshit happens, right? So like
Well,
things were just starting to like manifest. Palpatine's plan was just starting to kick into full gear because the whole point is there needed to be like peace and it needed to like
yeah,
slowly start crumbling. So what you're watching is the first cracks. But like
yeah,
coming from seeing it all destroyed, you're like, what is this like, you know, somewhat
okay,
balanced world, right? Like it
okay,
I could see like where when they watched it, they looked at like this is good. This is what we
yeah,
want. We want to show the contrast before the fall. But then as like Star Wars fans expecting it to feel the same,
mm-hmm.
it's a shock, right?
Yeah. I can kind of see that. I can kind of see that point. Excuse me, but at the same time, a desert planet is a desert planet. I mean, it's going to be dirty. It's going to be I think
Don't do
for,
Dubai exist? Don't give me that.
well, no, I get that. I get that, but no, I mean, like it's one of those things where hmm, I don't want to I guess you're right. It
but
there
when
is that.
but
Go ahead.
there's no context when people watch the movie initially. Like that wasn't clear that
Yeah.
that's what was happening. But then
Hmm.
like as things built out, like you get the Clone Wars TV series, it's like it's easy to be like, oh, okay, I see what like, but that wasn't explained. It was just like, here you go, and you're like, what is
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. And the Clone Wars TV show didn't even come out until God, the 2008. I think that was the original movie, and so
But
and
it even like if you did a color spread,
mhm.
like analysis of the prequel trilogy, you would watch the color palette get darker from
Yes,
the first one to like so it
yes.
like again when you like review it backwards, it's like oh this makes total sense, but like there was no context given for what was thrown at people, like and it
It didn't feel Star Warsy.
yeah, and then like, and then you had Darth Maul, which was the contrast, right? Like it was like this
Hmm.
bit of what you were expecting of Star Wars amidst this like bubble of other stuff.
Okay, I can
Which
see.
which
So,
again in canon, even in the movie, Qui-Gon's like, "Yo, like what the fuck was that?"
hmm.
Like, guys, we got like real problems
Well, what did you?
that we didn't know about. It wasn't like there was Sith everywhere. It was like, holy shit, a
Yeah.
Sith.
What did you think of Jar Jar Binks when you were a kid?
I see. I didn't even like him. Like he was funny,
Yeah.
but I don't want that in my Star Wars.
I don't think
Even
anybody
even
else wanted that in
even
their
as a
Star
grade
Wars
schooler,
either.
I was like, I no, like funny robots, fine. Like,
Yeah. Like I think that there's a great analysis of or a series of videos that analyze the prequels in by a group called Red Letter Media, and if you type in Red Letter Media Star Wars, you'll get them. And the the theory that they had is that the Phantom Menace literally tried to appeal to everybody.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Like you had Jar Jar Binks, who was for little babies,
Yep.
that kind of humor. You had Anakin Skywalker for like the grade school toy playing aged boys. You had the
Pod
sword fighting.
racing.
You had the sword fighting Jedi stuff for the, I guess, the more classic Star Wars fans, and then you had, uh, Natalie Portman. Carrie Fisher, I think, said she changed her outfit every time she walked through a door.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess,
Yeah, because I think that would be like the epitome of like the biggest critique is that is it tried to be this like blockbuster film as if like it was the first Star Wars movie ever done, like the new Marvel movies get done, right? Where it's
mm,
like, look at this big thing, everyone's gonna love it. And it's like, but that's not what anybody wanted.
no, it tried to cast too wide a net, and I think that, I mean, the prequel trilogy well, the Phantom Menace specifically, it in my mind, it exposed two big things. One of which is that George Lucas was not this movie making hero, this guy who could do no wrong that I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, including me, thought he was. I think that. I mean, obviously everybody loved the original Star Wars, everybody loved Indiana Jones, but I think the Phantom Menace was probably the first big black eye on his resume.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that in hindsight, it really exposed a new generation of toxic fandom
Mm.
who now had this new amazing tool called the internet
Yep. Yeah.
to sling mud at each other. And there's been articles published, and not just at each other, but at the actors and at George himself. You know,
Yeah.
Ahmed Best, the actor who famously did the voice and the motion capture for Jar Jar Binks, he was, I guess, nearly pushed to suicide because of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that might be the Phantom Menace's enduring legacy. I think, for at least for me, is exposing that sort of pre-Twitter toxic fanboy culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm
Well,
not an expert. This is how I see it.
yeah, and it carried on, and it's one of the beautiful moments of like how Star Wars has evolved to now, is the whole stuff with Hayden, because like
Mm-hmm.
again, same exact thing, like watching him play Anakin, people are like, this isn't what I wanted, but
Yeah.
when you look back from the whole perspective, it's like it makes sense that his character would like he acted how he should, like the whole point of Yoda's comment about Anakin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like totally in story was he had this just angsty ness
Yeah.
to him, and he nails it as an actor. But that's just not what people wanted. So he did a
No.
good job, just not what
Yes.
people wanted. And that
Yeah.
that toxic thing, like you know, he did a good job and still got hated until
Hayden Christensen, the actor who played Anakin Skywalker in episodes 1 and 2. Yeah, he was. He got. I mean, he. I don't know what kind of a career he would have had up to that point, but I mean, being directed by George Lucas was not good for him.
and it should
And
have been,
yeah,
right?
and you know what? I agree with you in the sense that, especially in terms of Attack of the Clones, the one that came out in 2002. And you know what? Even in a sense with the Phantom Menace, with Jake Lloyd, who played young Anakin, I think people in their mind were kind of expecting somebody like the kid in The Omen, who had these menacing eyes and this demon child who's going to grow up to be Darth Vader, and that's not what the story called for.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it wasn't really what people wanted. And that's not the actor's fault. That's, the writer and the director, that's the way they wrote and directed it. And, naturally he got to cut loose in the third one, which I think kind of redeemed him a little bit. But what's been cool, have you watched Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ahsoka on Disney Plus?
Mm-mm.
Well, he comes back as, well, sort of, as the character in those. And what's interesting, excuse me, is that people are, at least the people that I've seen, have been a lot nicer to him
Mm-hmm.
this time around. And I think I think part of it is nostalgia, because those movies came out, God help me, 20 years ago now. So, you've got people now who grew up on the prequels, who, have fond memories of him, the same way that you or I might have fond memories of Mark Hamill or Harrison Ford and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that effect. And plus, he does a good job. I mean, he was never a bad actor. He was just an actor that was put in an extremely unenviable situation.
Yeah.
Especially after The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and I just one of those things where I just don't know what people would have expected otherwise. Because like, the only other thing is for him to have been more like evil,
Yeah.
but instead it's like he's just youthfully angry, which is what he was
Yeah.
supposed to be as a character, and like
He is.
the Clone Wars TV show, like that character's style is based off of the one he initially like built, and
Yeah.
people love that Anakin. And that's where people started being like, oh yeah, like this is our Anakin. Like,
I think that there was. I remember there being some criticism when Episode 2 came out in 2002. There were people saying this should have been Episode 1 because if you start at that point, if you get Hayden Christensen in The Phantom Menace and then you have another movie to build the character at that age, you kind of capture maybe a little bit of that magic that the Clone Wars
yeah.
captured, in the sense that, okay, maybe he can be a little bit more likable as opposed to just sort of a wooden angry guy, or
Yeah.
not even a wooden angry guy, just a wooden guy
Well, yeah,
in
you
Attack of the
come
Clones.
you come in like right as he starts spiraling, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so you don't get to make him lovable because it's yeah he's it's immediate like you're introduced to his lovable qualities going to their excess initially. Like the whole
Mm-hmm.
he comes in at the uncomfortable level because
Yeah.
you're starting at the beginning of his fall. You don't get to see that in between, which is what the Clone Wars TV show builds up.
Right. 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 I hadn't seen the Clone Wars TV show for a long time. I went through a period when I was a kid. I went through something called that I call prequel denial, because there was everybody who just insisted, oh, these are bad movies. These aren't good movies. He's George Lucas is ruining his reputation. Blah blah blah, and certainly he tainted it a little bit. But I was of the mindset, like, from high school through college, like, no, these are great movies, you asshole. And it wasn't until that I got to be an adult that I sort of was able to look at it objectively and kind of say, okay, you can still love the movies, but they are what they are, warts
Mm-hmm.
and all. You know what I mean? And but yeah, I came into the I so I didn't see the Clone Wars show during that time, and then a couple of years ago, I started doing a blog series where I watched certain key episodes of the Clone Wars,
Mm.
and Dave Filoni, who is my understanding is he was the showrunner for the Clone Wars. He's the showrunner for Star Wars Rebels, which was the sequel series. He was in charge of Ahsoka. I mean, he's really George Lucas's, I don't successor is a big word, but I mean, it feels like he's the guy. Like, there's even people saying, just give Star Wars to Dave Filoni. Just let the Clone
Okay,
Wars guy
so
decide what's next.
this has always been my thing because I read uh, a book, the book about the backstory of Count Dooku.
Which
Uh,
book was that?
I read it so many years ago. I don't remember the first half in any like major detail.
Because
Uh,
I've read some Star Wars books. That's the reason I ask.
yeah, I don't remember which one it was. It I distinctly remember like him being shown around like the Jedi Temple, is
Okay.
and that type of stuff. But like the depth of his character and this is my point about like the when you put all the pieces together with those movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't get Count Dooku as a character in those movies. But when you have that other stuff and then you see the Jedi attacking him and with the context, he's the good guy. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, like it adds a depth to every scene. Um,
Yeah, and but by that same token, you shouldn't. The movies should work
right.
as their own self-contained entities.
Yes.
That supplemental material is great, and I've consumed a lot of that supplemental material.
But my main point was that was considered non-canonical.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like until the Clone Wars TV show started pulling in some of the non-canon stuff, it was all fan fiction
Oh, okay.
because
I get it.
it wasn't in the movie universe. And all it was the fans, it was the actual community that built out the
Mm-hmm.
universe. Because like I'm a Warhammer fan. Warhammer
Okay.
like it's the Warhammer team has built out a literal fucking galaxy, right? Like
Yeah.
every planet, every like sergeant and captain and like it's wild the detail, but it's a team. Like they do that. They make their canon like really robust. Where
Yeah.
it was the Star Wars community that built up the Star Wars lore.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, and that's a tribute to the love that well, yeah, it's a tribute to the love that people have for Star Wars. It's just it's a shame that as time go, well, maybe it's always been this way, but it's just a shame that that it's a two-sided coin. That Star Wars fans have such love for Star Wars and passion for Star Wars, but on the other side of that, it can come with a lot of vitriol when they
Yeah.
don't get what they think they should be getting.
Well, and okay, so how did you feel about the recent set of movies?
The sequel trilogy. I thought The Force Awakens was fine. I thought it was, it was a way to go.
Okay, so this is my thing. Everything after the original trilogy just was like, really? Like that's what you did with this beautiful universe, all these things. Like you keep
Yeah.
introducing characters, rushing through them. We don't bond with them. We don't
Mm-hmm.
like it. Just to me, it felt like the prequels all over again. It was like I can see the cool stuff you're trying to do, but it's just not
Well,
landing.
the Force Awakens and the Rise of Skywalker, God help me, were very safe. They were very safe movies. Uh, in terms of the Rise of Skywalker, to its own detriment, very much. The Last Jedi was a movie that I think it wanted to take some, because that was the Ryan Johnson movie. And that's the movie that is still very divisive to this day. I think it came out in 2017. And I didn't have a problem with the stuff that they did with Luke Skywalker and Rey and the Adam Driver character Kylo Ren. I didn't really have a problem with any of that stuff. It's just my problem with The Last Jedi was that Finn, no, I can't remember the actor's name, God help me, but Finn and Poe and everybody else kind of felt like they didn't really have anything to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, it felt like, they wanted to give Finn a hero arc of some kind, but he was already a hero coming out of The Force Awakens, so we didn't really need to do that. And then, they had the plot with Oscar Isaac trying to stand up to Laura Dern's character, which didn't really make any sense. So I agree in the sense that, okay, you've got a lot of great stuff here. It's just this is what you did with it.
Well, and it's some of the like the writing like mistakes of like it's been a while since I watched them, and I'm a Warhammer Star Trek guy, so I appreciate Star
Okay.
Wars. But
Okay.
that's not where my depth is. But like
Okay.
all of a sudden we get thrown on a Sith planet with Sith alchemy technology
Yeah, there you go.
for just a little bit. And it's like, where the fuck was this? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, good news, it's all gone. I was like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? Like I was
Well,
pissed.
I think Ryan Johnson even said when he got to The Last Jedi, they didn't have a plan. I think I think the idea, this is pure conjecture on my part, but when Disney bought Star Wars, it's like, okay, let's cash in now. And, I think and they did cash in, but I think the ironic thing is that, like, had you waited a little bit longer and maybe kind of, made the cake a little bit more and put it in the oven, given it some time to cook, you could have made a lot more money and a lot more movies.
Yeah, had they done
more TV shows?
had they done the Marvel thing, right? Like if they had introduced basically it's what they have successfully done with the TV shows because like the Mandalorian, oh,
Yes,
wonderful.
most of it. Yes.
Yeah, I haven't watched all of it because I just don't watch a lot of TV or movies in general. But like it slow the pace down,
Yes.
simplify the storytelling, like
Yes.
let the depth build, like as the flavor simmers, right? Like,
Have you seen season 3 of The Mandalorian yet?
no, I think I only got through two, and I
You only got through 2.
mm,
Okay. What about the Book of Boba Fett?
mm-mm.
Okay, but it's because it's 1, 2, Boba Fett 3. That's the
Okay.
chronology of it.
Yeah, there's
I'm not gonna spoil it for you. I'm
yeah,
not gonna spoil it for you.
there's so many things where it's like once I realize how invested I have to be in it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to like I
No,
my
you
my
know what?
one investment is One Piece, and that's a big investment.
Okay, One Piece. What's the Fluffy McStuffins? What's his name? The main character?
Luffy?
Yeah, him.
Yeah,
What?
Monkey D. Luffy.
Yeah, no. Okay, so I've somebody was telling me about One Piece at work the other day, and I was like, okay, there's 1,000 episodes.
1100.
There's 11. How do you make 1,100 episodes of anything?
Well, to be fair, they're comic book episodes, right? So it's just boom, boom. Like
There's
there,
they're shorter.
oh, there are ones that if you take out the intro, outro, and recap, they're 10-minute long.
Okay, all right. So they're
You
in
could
terms
watch,
of the actual amount of content being
yeah,
produced.
you could watch 5 episodes of One Piece, and the same time you could watch one like new school 45-minute like mini movie show.
Okay, like a Mandalorian episode.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah,
Okay,
you could be knocking out 5 to 10 like at a time compared
so
to.
so are you an anime guy then? Generally speaking.
See, this is where it's tough because like, uh, I've got like a handful of animes. One Piece is the only one that I'm like
Okay.
a diehard fan for. But out of the media I watch,
Yes.
anime has always not always been, but like has been probably the biggest one.
Okay. Because see, anime has never been my thing, and it's not. Excuse me. It's not an aversion I have to it. I just don't know where. And I asked somebody at work about this. Shout out to Liz. I where's a good access point for anime? Where's is it? And people ask me the same question with comic books too. Like where do you? I want to read comics. Where do I start? I want to watch anime. Where do I start?
Hmm.
Okay, you answer the second one. I'll try and answer the first one.
So, the reason people have trouble with that with anime is a medium, which I think we're
Yes.
getting the same problem with comics.
Mm-hmm.
Because when people think of anime, they think of uh, shonen, which is like young male protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
That's a type of anime. It just happens to
Okay.
be like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, One Piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ones that get famous are all this like particular genre, but there's ones where you just follow like there's whole animes where it's just somebody's regular day life, like a
Yeah.
sitcom, but like
Okay.
no laugh track, no trying to ham it up. It's just really you just follow around these imaginary characters living lives.
It's the equivalent of superheroes in comic books. When people think of comic books, everybody thinks of
Exactly.
superheroes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so it's one of those things where like real anime fans will be like, well, what other kind of stuff are you into? Like, are you
Yeah.
into Showtime? Are you into Cinemax? Are you into dramas? Like, because there's whole other realms, which is how I know I'm not an anime guy because I don't get into that.
Right.
um,
So
if
it's more a matter of what your personal tastes are, as opposed to where should I access anime.
yeah, my so as much as I love One Piece, not a good starter anime.
Okay.
The three I usually give people is if you want to understand what makes anime fun, Fairy Tale.
I've heard of that one.
It's just a fun romp. Like
Okay.
there's just enough depth where you get feels occasionally, like in heavy parts of it, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of tropey with all the different anime tropes, but in a really kind of not trying to hide it way and like poking
Yeah.
fun at it.
Okay.
Um, if you just want to see how anime can be cool,
Mm-hmm.
Soul Eater.
Soul Eater.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Sounds fun.
like Death, the Grim Reaper, is like a teacher of a school. Yeah, again, fun, cool, like
Okay.
And then, what was the third one? Oh, if you want one that's like legitimately holy fucking shit storytelling, Full
Yeah,
Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
that I've heard of.
Like if you,
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
yeah, the because there's two Full Metal Alchemists. There's the one that they originally started doing, and then they got ahead of the comics, so they
Okay.
just started making shit up,
Yeah.
and it went off the rails. And then
Yeah.
after the comics were complete, they redid the series, so it actually flows how the story does. But if you want one that has like, the kind of depth of storytelling that you would see in like a Game of Thrones or Witcher or whatever it is, like you just want a really good story and see how
Mm.
like strong that can be.
Okay.
Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist is considered one of the best animes ever as far as the story goes. One Piece
Yeah.
also falls into the category, but Full Metal Alchemist is efficient. Where One Piece, one of the crazy things is like you follow them in real time. Like
Yeah.
you get gaps, like when they're just spending days on the ship, but
Right.
like almost everything that happens to the characters you're there for, which
Okay.
as you become invested in it, like you're really into like the
Yeah.
stuff. But where Full Metal Alchemist is efficient, right? Got a good beat as a
And
story.
they're still making One Piece, right?
We're coming ever nearer to the
Oh,
finale.
really?
It's like
It,
within reach.
is it like within the year, or within?
Oh
Is this one of those things like within 5 years?
yeah, 5 years, that kind of range.
Okay. So we're close, but we're not that close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still
No,
time to be excited.
exactly. No, I think that comic books are the same kind of way in the sense that you can't necessarily think of them in terms of, like you can say, well, excuse me, you can say, well, if I want to get into Batman, where do I enter?
Yeah, yeah,
That can
yeah.
kind of be a thing, but it's one of those things where, like, if somebody comes up to me and says, okay, I want to get into comics, where can I start? I think my advice to them would be to either go to a comic shop, uh, such as Marbleheads here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, or or just like a bookstore, a Barnes and Noble type place, and just sit down and look and just see what jumps out at you.
So
Because
on the note of Marbleheads, if you're gonna look for comic book stores, there's two types of comic book stores. There's ones that used to be all brown interiors that they now
mm-hmm,
updated to look clean, and you know those
mm-hmm,
ones because the owner works there and is old.
okay,
Those are your best ones.
mm-hmm,
Then there's the new ones where it's people that like want to sell the merch and the anime stuff with the comics and they're younger owners. Cool
yeah,
stuff, you can get cool stuff there. But if you want the comic book experience, find one that either still has the brown like interior
yeah,
or make sure that the like owner works there and is old because then when you're like, I want to get into comics whatever, they'll hand you
yeah,
something and this is my same thing with anime. So with anime, my thing is always just like pick an anime and just keep watching it. Don't
yes.
be like, oh, like I don't get it at the first episode. You won't. So same thing
No,
with the
really?
comic. Yeah. Same thing with
Okay.
same thing with the comic. Like they hand you a comic, read the whole thing, get the next issue, read the whole thing, and if by the
Yeah.
third one you're like, this isn't for me, okay. But because I'm the same with the anime, like when I tell people about anime, like you have to watch like 3 to 5 episodes because until then there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm. You gotta have patience with it.
Yeah, because like, I don't get any of this. It's like nothing's happened yet.
Well, and it's new. It's a new kind of medium you're looking at. So you sort of have to absorb what it is.
Mm-hmm.
At least I would imagine. Did we
Did
freeze?
you stay on the call?
I did.
I dropped.
Oh.
Yeah, my internet's been like switching. I pay for really fast internet, and then
Oh
right
yeah?
as I hopped on, it was slow, and then I got it back up to the speed. But as long as
There's
you're on, I'm
no,
should be
I'm
like,
on. I've got like two screens of you. There's one half where I can see you, and then there's another half where there's just an M.
oh
So I
boy.
don't know. I don't know if it thinks there's somebody else on or what happened, but
Here, I'm gonna speed test. Let's just see if for some reason No, okay. See, yeah, now I'm running at 330 megabits per second. I
Hmm.
don't I don't know if it's the weather
Could be.
that because we've had some nasty weather lately.
True that. True that. Are we still recording? Are we still going?
Yep, it's still going because that's what I was asking if you were still on because then it's just gonna be one seamless take where I drop for a second.
Okay.
So, but yeah, just to like make it clear for people, like when you ask like, oh, what anime or what comic, that's like asking, oh, I want to get into movies. What movie should I watch? Like it's
Yeah, there you go.
they're mediums. Like
Yes.
there's tropes like to the mediums. So
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's genres. I mean, you've got genres within mediums that are popular, and tropes within a medium that are popular. But I mean, it's really a question of what your personal tastes are, I guess, and what you like.
but
You know?
the answer is going to be the same. It's like either find somebody you trust, go to a place that's like where that's a thing,
Yes.
pick a thing and commit at least a bit to it.
Mhm.
You have to give
And
it a real
that's
chance.
and that's the trouble with with people sometimes, is that our attention spans are so low sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find myself, oh God, Has Been Hotel. I watched not long ago. Have you heard Has Been Hotel?
I've heard of it.
It's like the devil's daughter runs a hotel in hell. Basically,
Yep.
that's the abbreviated elevator premise. And it's one of those things where I like it, but it's like, you're holding my attention, or you're not. I could walk away. I couldn't. So you gotta kind of stick with it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
They also for the anime one, it's not technically an anime,
Okay.
but if you haven't watched Avatar, fucking watch Avatar. It is one of the best shows to have ever existed.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, they didn't they make a horrible movie out of that?
Yes. So this is
I
they
know
did
it's not the same thing, but
no. This is the thing. Every live action from an anime, the writer, the original writer of the anime, has backed out of the project,
really?
and the movie's flopped. The only time it has they stayed involved was the writer of One Piece for the Netflix show because he's
Okay.
like, we either do this my way or you don't get my show.
Yeah. And you know what? To an extent, that's the way it should be.
Right? Like, partly because it's like who's their intended audience? It's the people that watch that
Yes,
stuff,
the
right? So
people who.
when they hear that the writer left, the
Yeah.
fans are like, well, fuck this. Like, what did you do that
Mm-hmm.
was so bad that they walked
Exactly.
away?
So historically speaking, every anime writer backs out of the live action
As
project. Is that what it is?
far as I know, the only one I know of where it was the original writer did the live action and stayed for the whole project was the One Piece show.
Okay. Wow. So the ones that my homework coming from the podcast is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's Fairy Tale,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a second one. Give me a second
Uh,
one.
the last one was Soul Eater.
Soul Eater. There you go. That's the pleasant sounding one.
Yeah,
There you go.
because they're all different flavors within the shonen thing where it's like young male protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Although Soul Eater is a young female protagonist, but it's the same like structure.
Okay.
Um, and if you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, right?
I've seen it. Are you gonna come beat me up?
No, just
Okay.
rewatch it because it
Well,
has an incredible rewatchability.
well,
There's
wait.
so much depth to it.
Aren't there like a couple of versions of it though? Or isn't there the animated version, and then don't they have a live action version? We're
Hmm.
talking about the animated version, right?
The Last Airbender's only got an animated version, and there's The Last Airbender, and there's Legend of Korra.
Okay.
Um, People responded to Legend of Korra very much how they did to the Star Wars prequels.
Okay.
My co-host is a fan of what we did a whole episode talking about Avatar, like,
Okay. Oh wow.
because the world is crazy. And he is a big defender of the second series, the sequel
Okay.
series. But like I watched the first one with the kid, and he loves
Mm-hmm.
it. And then I tried to watch the second one with him, and it is they're not the same show. It's the same kind of thing where it's like the way the characters are introduced, the kind of story arc they're going through, the setting is all different. Same world,
Yeah.
same basic premise, but
Mm-hmm.
it is a totally different type of storytelling, and it's harder to watch than the original.
Harder to watch.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it moves at a weird pace.
So should I do the last Airbender or Avatar before I do the other three? Would you have me do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
because that was just objectively a good thing, and then when you watch an anime, you've already kind of like gotten into
You've,
the like
you've already
animated storytelling.
you've got the flavor down
Yeah,
pat a little bit. Okay.
because Avatar: The Last Airbender is anime inspired, but
Yeah.
because it's not
Okay.
Japanese, it's not technically an anime.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. All right, you know what? I'm legitimately gonna try the anime thing. I really because like I feel like it's an entire subculture that I'm missing out on, and given what I do, it would behoove me to at least give it a shot. Are
What?
you a manga reader too?
No, see, and that's the thing is I was gonna start picking up both the habits comics
Okay.
because one's just Japanese comics and one's
Yeah.
Western comics. So maybe like you can go get the. Okay, I have one. I watch anime and I can never say see like
Manga?
manga. For some reason, I always move the G in my head. I don't know why. Like, and you just said it.
Magna?
Yeah, I
Oh
don't know
man.
manga. I don't know why I do that. I've been around the word forever and I cannot. It's like a weird specific dyslexia. But like maybe you could read one of those and like bridge the gap from where you're at.
Maybe.
For
See
that,
that
I would not have any suggestions because
I
one,
was
I
gonna
don't read
say
them.
that's an entirely different pool to jump in though. It's an entirely different pool. I wouldn't know where to jump in. We gotta get either a manga expert or a Magna expert on here with us
I would
next
say
time.
I would say you could pick any of the same animes because they hold because of the books.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things again where it's like you're like, oh, I'm gonna get into that. It's because like I'm not a anime nerd. My brother is.
Okay.
He specifically hunts down obscure anime. Like that is something he does in his
Okay.
free time for fun.
Really?
Because there's an anime about a train that floats through space.
Oh, that trope.
Yeah, like weird stuff.
Is he younger than you or older than you?
Younger than me.
Okay.
Yeah, he. It's the funny thing because like I grew up like playing the video games and like was the first one like into all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then he got better at video games. He got more in depth with like nerd knowledge. Like he is nerd supreme. Like if I have questions about anything, like
See,
he does comic, animes, video games, like all of it. He is up to date. Like
he's an all-encompassing nerd. Wow. No, see my brother is shout out to Scott. He's the smart one of the two of us. And my parents hate when I say that, but he's Mr. Political Science. He's the guy with the practical real world knowledge. And here I am with my Power Rangers and my Ninja Turtles in my basement, God help me.
although when you asked about things like as topics, so some we might be able to talk about that's kind of more on brand with what we do in our general episodes, I guess. There's this idea that one of the reasons comics were originally popular and have continued to grow in popularity is the human need for myth, and that the comic book world, the comic book stories are like our modern mythologies.
Yes. I mean, I'm not a big expert on mythology, strictly speaking, but I mean,
Well, you might be if comic books are mythology.
exactly. There you go. No, I mean, but yeah, I mean, it does fill. I think it does fill a certain void in terms of, you have these heroic god type figures, whether you're talking about your Superman or your Batman or your Spider-Man or whoever, and, you have, pardon me, these idol figures that people can look to and, sort of aspire to be. And I think it does very much fill a, I don't know if it's a void, but I think it fills a need in the human spirit. I mean, again, I wouldn't call myself an expert in that sense, but I mean, it makes sense when you consider how, because Superman was created in 1938. So we're
Which is
coming up
wild.
on almost 100 years of Superman here. And, characters, and Batman follows him by only a year in 1939. So, it's one of those things where, there's a reason that these characters and these ideas endure. And I think that it speaks to a certain human need.
So it's one of the things that makes comics different than regular literature, because regular literature wouldn't fall into the category of like mythology because they're both
Mm-hmm.
storytelling.
Yeah.
But comic books are organic storytelling, and this is because like there's different versions of Batman, different versions of Superman. You can
Yeah.
play with the ideas in a way that you
Mm-hmm.
can't with a book that once it's printed, like that's the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a certain fluidity to it. Like, for instance, I just reviewed a book called Get Fury, or the first issue of a book called Get Fury, and it stars Nick Fury, who people know from the Marvel movies as the Samuel L. Jackson character, and the Punisher.
Hmm.
Except they're soldiers in the Vietnam War. So you've got, and one of them has to kill the other because they have sensitive information that can't get out to the enemy, and so you have these different versions of these characters that can be translated into almost any era
Mm-hmm.
and almost any circumstance. Like, there's a famous Batman story called, Batman Gotham by Gaslight,
Mm-hmm.
which transports Batman back into, I think, the Victorian age.
Oh, and there's Batman as a ninja. There's Batman as a samurai. Like whole
There's
series
Bat
on them.
there's Batman as in everything, and then you've got Superman Red Sun, which tells the story of, what if the rocket that carried baby Kal-El to Earth landed in communist Russia. So I
Mm.
mean, you can mold these ideas into different positions and dichotomies, and they hold, which, you're right, is very different from, you can't really do that with Frodo and the Ring and the Shire,
Yep.
or you can't necessarily do that even with Harry Potter, or something like that. So there is a moldability to it that's different.
Which partly unrelated, but just gonna point out Batman beats every other superhero in comic like canon. Like
Yes.
given his ability to do it, that is part of his superpower.
Yes, yes. The idea is that if you give Batman enough time to prepare and do his homework, he can beat anybody. That's
Hmm.
the idea.
If he knows the
Uh,
fight's coming.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And you know what? Like, I, you might not be old enough to remember Wizard magazine.
I've heard of it, yeah.
You've heard of it? Okay, there was. I really wish I could remember who this comic book creator was, but um, he was asked the age old question: who would win in a fight, Superman or Batman?
Hmm.
Now, you ask a common person on the street that question, they're going to say Batman, just because Batman has a cool factor that, for whatever reason, Superman doesn't have. I don't know. I could rant about that, but um, what the guy's answer was, well, if the fight happened in Batman's book, Batman would win, and if it happened in Superman's book, Superman would win.
Hmm.
So it kind of depends on who's got home field advantage
Right, which
from
is
from
back,
a meta perspective.
which is that mythology thing, right? Like,
Mhm. Exactly. See, it all comes together, my man. It all comes together.
But yeah, some of my favorite Batman moments are the fact that he's the anti-hero
Yeah.
in the most literal sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
every time like they're like, "Oh, look, there's this new hero." He's like, Step 1, figure out how to destroy them."
Yes.
just just in case.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's part of the appeal of Batman is that he has the mythology, or not the mythology, the iconography of a demon. That's the one of the most famous Batman writers of all time, Denny O'Neil, has said that he has the iconography of a demon. So he looks and feels evil, but he's not evil. He's good. And you've also got the fact that, well, to an extent, he's a self-made man. Now, mind you, he's a self-made man with a lot of money, but he's a guy who traveled the world and studied and honed his body to perfection, and he made himself what he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a big part too of the appeal of Batman. But the thing about I told you Batman was my gateway into comic books, but I think that the older I get, the more I'm becoming a Superman guy.
Yeah,
And go ahead.
the and this is what's funny thing is that Superman started out just as tropey as you imagined him,
Yes.
but as they've built the depth of Superman,
Mm-hmm.
it's wild. He has definitely more. Yeah, he's got more depth. Like
Well,
the deeper version of Superman is deeper than the deeper version of Batman.
I think so. Yeah, and also just I mean, you tell people that, I think I'm becoming more of a Superman guy than a Batman guy, and they look at you like you're nuts. Like, what? Are you
Well,
like I?
you have somebody who lands on a planet, realizes he's a god among people, and then has to figure out how to deal with that. And then you have a guy who wants to solve a problem and makes it worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's. I used to work with. I guess I still do. With a lot of people who are in their 20s, and some people in their 20s have a real visceral reaction to characters like Superman and Captain America, and people who stand for, I guess, values. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean every superhero stands for values, but they're Superman and Captain America are draped in the flag pretty much, and a lot of people that I've interacted with in their 20s are like, ew, why would you do that? But I think that maybe as you get older, you start to understand where those values come from and why they persevere. Things like truth and just, this sounds hokey, but truth and justice and honesty and the right thing, and you have children and you want to instill those values in them. I think that, I don't know, maybe that's why I'm becoming more of a Superman guy than a Batman guy. I don't know.
Well, and yeah, there's a bit to it. One of my favorite characters that I didn't realize had as much depth as they do is, again, as they've been fleshed out as a character, is Spider-Man.
Yes.
Because people do not understand how strong he is
Mm-hmm.
canonically, and that um, he's a person with superpowers, which was how he was built as a character. He was
Yes.
specifically not going to be a hero. He just
Yes.
happens to help. He helps people, but he's just a person that happens to have powers.
Yeah, and that's how that was a big part of I think the way that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, the writer and the artist, built his world.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that he was, okay, yes, he's a superhero, but he's a superhero with everyday problems like making rent and getting to his job and making sure that his aunt is okay. That's
Mm-hmm.
where I think a lot of, once you get into the Marvel age of heroes, that 1950s, 1960s time frame, that's where I think a lot of the depth of superheroes came from, where we want to know more. We want to know more about these guys and girls as people,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, well, can they move a planet with their bare hands?
But
I
like,
think
so
that's
Spider-Man was built with that in mind, which makes him
yes.
unique. And people don't understand that there's very few Earth heroes he can't go toe to toe with.
Mm-hmm.
He learned very quickly that he has to pull his power way back, or he would
Mm-hmm.
kill every person he came into contact with.
Yeah. Well, he's got the proportional. Is that the word? The
Yeah,
proportional strength of a
of a
spider.
spider. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, and no one really understands what that means until they think about it. But like, oh, okay, wow. But yeah, it's that theme of power and responsibility, man.
Which, yeah,
You've
again,
got.
is like his thing. It's why it's the famous quote from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But he's, yeah. So whenever you see Spider-Man struggling, it's not because he's struggling to find the strength. He's struggling to not overdo it.
Exactly. He's a man. He's a man struggling with his own power.
Although, I got all these weird tangents. These are all things that I think about and I talk about with very few people.
Shoot,
So
come on.
the kid loves Sonic, and every time somebody's like, "Oh, Sonic," I'm like, "Speedsters are broken. All speedsters. Fuck
All
speeds."
speed. All
Yeah,
speedsters are broken.
yeah. This is something from my brother because he's when people talk in the DC universe, they're like, "Oh, all this." He's like, "Flash." He's like,
Yeah.
"Flash." Like, and then this is his whole thing. Speedsters deal with speed. It's like, okay, they run fast. No, no, no,
Yes.
no. They deal with speed, which is time. And time is integral to
Mm-hmm.
space, meaning their
Yeah.
power is the power to bend time and space. And every
Yes.
speedster, as their character arc develops, eventually reaches like multi-dimensional power.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one, because they have to.
Yeah. There's a famous issue of the Flash where the Barry Allen Flash, the Flash with the all red suit and the hood and the lightning bolts, comes. He meets the Flash of the '40s with the hat and the red shirt and the lightning bolt, and that's because he's found his way into an alternate universe and
Mm-hmm.
he's discovered the multiverse. But yeah, that's oh, excuse me. Yeah, that's speedsters are more powerful than people think they are.
They're broken.
And
And the thing
yeah,
is, like, people didn't think about that when they were making them. That's very
no,
clear.
no, absolutely not, absolutely not. They just wanted somebody who runs fast. So now the question is, for the kid is Sonic broken?
Yeah, like because Sonic has comics, and in one of the comics, he like runs so fast he gets to the interdimensional like road. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh snap! And then he explores the entirety of the universe, all the
Mm-hmm.
multiverses, and all the planets within a single issue. He's like, well, that was cool.
Within one issue?
Yeah, they
Oh,
don't show the stuff. They just show that like he's like running
yeah,
like, but like the concept being like, because time stops because
yeah.
it's time and space, so he can stop time to do
Mm-hmm.
all this. Like it's
Jeez Louise. See, I've never touched Sonic comics, not because I'm not interested in Sonic, but just because it feels like uh, I think I'm intimidated. I think I'm intimidated. Archie used to have the license. I'm not sure if they still do.
uh there's so like all true comics, there's two versions of Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
There's full speedster Sonic, and then there's just fast Sonic.
Okay.
And they're different characters. The speedster is typically the more comical character.
Yeah.
Um, but then there's the one that's in the gritty universe. So there's the villain has the same name, but he's two different villains. There's Doctor Eggman, which is a
Yeah,
speedster
Dr.
villain,
Eggman, yeah, and
who's kind of
Dr.
goofy
Robot.
because
Yeah.
he can't possibly beat a speedster. And then there's
Mm,
Doctor Robotnik, who's just fighting a guy who's really fast.
right.
So he constantly gets the upper hand. So it creates this
Mm-hmm.
dystopian world, and it's wild. So there's like these two different versions of Sonic, which is fun.
I've got homework coming out of this podcast. Yeah, this is how I knew this podcast was smarter than me, because like now I've got anime homework and I've got Sonic homework.
My thing is knowing a little bit about a lot.
Knowing a little bit about a lot. No, you know what? I I think I take pride in not in. Well, I don't want to say I take pride in it, but you know, I tell my wife, I'm not an expert in anything really, and she says you're an expert in comics. It's like, well, no, I'm more a student of comics. I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I'm a student in the sense that I'm curious about things and I want to know. I'm curious about certain things and I want to know more. So I think there's almost a perception on my part in the sense that if you become an expert on something, you almost stop learning about it.
Well, that's one of those dichotomies, right? Like a true expert is always a student,
Mm-hmm. Ah, see.
but the people that portray themselves as experts portray that they're not students, that they're authorities.
See, this is why you're the smart one. This is why you're the smart one.
Well, and the tag for our podcast is Two Fools Trying to Figure It All Out.
I think the title for this episode is The Fool and the Fuck Up. That's the title for this episode.
The fuck up? We haven't talked
Yeah.
about fucking up.
Well,
Let's talk about your
it
Ninja Turtle like dilemma.
there you go, there you go,
I saw that one today.
yeah. The one where the one where my wife would wanted me to buy
Well, either
the
you
Ninja
bought the one
Turtles?
you wanted, or you
Yes.
played Russian roulette.
Well,
with
well,
Ninja
no.
Turtles.
Here's the thing. The 1990 Ninja Turtles movie, my friend. That's the definitive Ninja Turtles for me. Okay, now there's much like Sonic. Are you seeing fireworks in the background of my video?
Yeah, how did that just happen?
I have no idea, but I'm here for it. I thought I drank too much wine. Okay. No, that. Much like with Sonic, there's a million versions of the Ninja Turtles, but the definitive version for me is it's the 1990 movie with the Jim Henson animatronic faces and the rubber suits.
Hmm.
That's you've seen that one, I'm sure.
Uh, I would have been very young.
That's your homework, my friend. You get homework from it. You take the kid. You sit him down in front of the TV and you say, "Watch this."
And we'll follow it up with the Mario movie because he'd be like, "Oh, Mario," and then it's kind
Oh
of
no! Oh no! Oh, why would you? Why? Oh, I'm calling Child Protective Services on you. Okay, but no, NECA makes action figures based on all this stuff, and they've got. I was at C2E2 a couple of weekends ago, the big comic book convention in Chicago, and I happened to find Leonardo and Donatello from the 1990 movie sitting on a shelf somewhere for $50, which, considering these are like pristine. Here, you know what? I'm going to pick one off the shelf. You can't see this on Spotify, sorry. But they're
you
like
got video on Spotify. Just people don't.
Oh, you do have
watch
video on Spotify. Okay, so this is like pristine, highly detailed shit right here. Okay? So I found Leo and Donnie, but like you can't be the scrub who has 2 Ninja Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have 4 Ninja Turtles. And the other day I was having a really bad mental health day. And I spilled to my wife that, I kind of want to spend $100 to buy the other 2 Ninja Turtles. And she, my wife being very supportive says, well, okay, go ahead and do it. If that makes you feel better, go ahead and do it. And, I chickened out is what I did because I'm notoriously cheap. And so I leave my wife on red for a little bit, and my wife's name is Laura, by the way. I'm going to use her name. Hopefully she doesn't mind. And Laura sends me a message a little bit later that says, if you don't buy these things, I'm just going to go ahead and buy whatever I think they are.
Which, yeah, that's a terrifying prospect.
Yeah, I mean, my wife she's a geek, she's a fangirl, she's all those great things. She's a librarian, bless her heart. But she knows next to nothing about the Ninja Turtles. So, God forbid she goes out and buys the NECA Ninja Turtles from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, which while similar, are not. They're not the same, ladies and gentlemen. All right, they've got the same voices, but they're not the same. And so yeah, I went and I spent $100. God help me on to get Raphael and Michelangelo, and now you can't have those things and have a TikTok channel like I do and not display them. So now they're in the background of all my videos.
It's weird how, I, leading back into like our type of podcast thing, it's weird how some of those like little things can have, and I guess back to the mythology thing, have such a profound effect on like your psyche. Like I've
Yeah,
got like a couple little things in this house that like I bought kind of like as a mental health thing, where like I was like, there's like a feeling, and whenever I interact with it in the house, I'm like, like
yeah,
it has this weird like release of tension just seeing it
yeah.
or interacting with it sometimes.
Well, it reminds you, at least to an extent, of a time that's less complicated. Because you and I, we're I mean, God help me, you're working 12, 13-hour days nowadays, and you've got, you've got a kid that you're raising. It's a complicated time of your life, and you interact with those things from your childhood, and it for at least a little bit, you remember, what you were like when life wasn't so complicated and things were more simple. And
Well, and it's not even the nostalgia thing, because something I've done very passively, and then as becoming a family man, it's become my thing.
hmm
You can kind of see it. I got my camera reversed. I like started collecting mushroom stuff.
okay,
Like, yeah, I got like two ceramic ones back there. Like this is on my desk.
okay,
And yeah, it's just one of those things where like they're around the house everywhere.
yeah,
And like mostly they're in the background, so like I don't notice them because as I'm going about my day. But like when the house is like clean and quiet, like I'll notice them. I'll get that like, like
hmm
it's weird that humans have this like thing with trinkets, and then there's an added level with it, like if it's a nostalgic trinket. Because like I bought
yeah.
him the original. Oh, what is the brand? It's like the '90s play castle.
Play school.
No, I keep thinking of the name that they got sold out to, which is Imaginext.
Mm.
Because I was trying to buy the original figures.
I know what you're talking about, though.
If I showed it to you, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that castle." Because
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, here's one of my things: modern kids' toys aren't built to stand,
No.
and it's one of the most frustrating things in the world. Because that was one of the things I liked about the set as a kid is you had these fat little knights with
Yeah.
wide feet stances, so they
Yeah.
stood real easy. So like
Mm-hmm.
a 2 or 3 year old could play with knights. But now like everything, even for like little kids, is like an action figure,
Yeah.
so they just fall over.
Things got too detailed for their own good, and they just plop right over. And you know what? It's not because I know exactly what you're talking about because I think I had that. And yeah, it's there's something to be said for playability, folks. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, there was the '90s, so like early '90s to early 2000s was like a heyday for children's toys.
Yes.
And one of my things that I don't like that I see all the time now is kids all identify with IP. Because
Mm.
like I was into knights and magic and like army stuff or like
Yeah.
sci-fi fantasy as like genres that there was
Yeah.
things within. But all the kids I see now, like there's very few that are like, oh, I'm into princesses and fairies, or I'm into ninjas and pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it seems to be more rare, at least
It's there's
at the younger
brand
ages.
loyalty going on.
Yeah, from like a really early age, and like they phase out of it a little bit as they get
Mm-hmm.
more exposed. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen with some of the older kids that get hanging around and stuff,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Maybe
just
that's the product. Is that the product of like companies like Disney and Warner Brothers and the dominance that they have over the media landscape, and you push certain properties as opposed to certain concepts. Is that what that is?
yeah, part of it. And I think it's they're the kids now are raised with the generation that's into their nostalgia.
Yeah, there you go. See, this is why you're this. Keep going.
Yeah, well, because like we didn't have like the IPs developed as we were developing, but now that
Yes.
we're bringing it in, they're getting it full force, and then the new reboots. So it's
Hmm.
double layers of like that's just
You've got the parents pushing it on the kids to an extent.
or putting it in their environment, right? In a
Yeah,
way that
which
it didn't exist. You're like our parents didn't have any characters, or if they
no,
were, they were like movie stars,
no,
something that
yeah,
was
like
totally disconnected from us as kids.
yeah, like my parents were born in the 50s and raised in the 60s and that time period. It wasn't yeah, that 80s and 90s time frame. That's when it really developed, I feel like. And yeah, we are one of the first generations that kind of had a childhood in that sense.
Hmm.
And now we're bringing it to our kids. And what's interesting for me is I have two girls. So what I'm bringing in from a nostalgic perspective is different than what they might be exposed to if they were spending what they might get on their own. Because my kids know what a Power Ranger is. My kids know who all the Ninja Turtles are. That kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
it's interesting that dichotomy being a parent of two girls.
Yeah, I could see that.
Hmm.
Yeah, what a wild time to be alive.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
So fun, like random things for me. Uh, there's a, I don't know if this is actually true. I've heard it several times, so I just re-say it. Eventually, somebody correct me, or it'll just keep being a folk legend. But there's
Okay.
allegedly a Chinese curse that you would say to somebody. So somebody like upset you, or like you didn't like somebody, you would say, "May you have an interesting life." And the concept is like the goal is to have a peaceful life,
Yeah. Okay.
which a peaceful life is always going to be kind of boring. So it was like a threat to be like, may you live. Oh no, it's may you live in interesting times.
May you live in interesting times.
Yeah. So it's like,
Okay.
because that's what we live in now, right? Like there's
That's a Chinese proverb.
yeah. So I've been told from again multiple sources. I think all internet
Mm-hmm.
based, but I think it's a cool concept of like the the goal of like a peaceful life is gonna be kind of boring, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, do you want a peaceful life, or do you want an interesting life, or do you want a combination of both? Well, I guess if you have to pick one or the other, do you want a peaceful life or do you want an interesting life?
Hmm.
I know which one I'm picking.
I mean, the right answer is a peaceful life.
Is it though? Is that the right answer?
Okay, because the point with interesting is that's it's I guess it's the old dichotomy of like you get the good with the bad, right? So it's like
Yeah.
if it's peaceful, uh, yeah, this is where we have a whole episode on good, and it falls exactly into this dichotomy. Because the thing about
Okay.
peaceful is it's the hum of goodness, right? So it's not like big highs and the of course the like thing about it makes it interesting is big lows. It's just
Yeah.
like you appreciate things as they are. So
Uh-huh.
so you actually are net happier.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel that way, which is why people
Right.
opt for the interesting life.
Uh-huh. See, that's what I was leaning toward. The interesting life, even though, you have your ups and downs, but like I mean in theory, I could stay in this room for the rest of my life and live a peaceful life,
See,
you know?
my heroes have always been wizards because like people talk about
Okay.
like oh like I'm like getting stir crazy. I need to like go do something or oh I haven't talked to people like whatever like oh I haven't talked to my friends and blah blah blah. I'm like you could leave me in this house for 3 months and at no point and you could take away the internet. You could take away the internet, leave me in this house for three
Really?
months, and I would not get bored.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what's What would you do in your house for 3 months? Just
Think, write, read.
damn. See, you have a mind that yearns for that kind of peacefulness. Then I would assume.
My the dichotomy of my personality is like I'm in my youth I was a punk, so I've got that like angst.
Is it angst or angst?
Are we gonna do this now? Angst.
Okay, okay. No, my parents bothered me with. My parents had that debate when I was getting. Okay, it's angst. Go ahead.
Is it?
I don't put. For don't worry about it. It's not important.
What's the etymology of the word? But
You were a punk. You had angst. Go ahead. Go.
yeah. So it's the if I'm going to live in the world, I'm going to do it interestingly.
Yeah.
Because so it's one of my tropes as okay. So I'll sometimes call myself a philosopher only because like I try to philosophize.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a degree in philosophy because degrees in philosophies are the study of the history of philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
which makes you a historian,
Yeah.
not a philosopher.
You're not a philosopher. You're
Yeah.
a historian.
So one of my things, so because I haven't, people have said this in their own way, but nothing's new under the sun. But like my one of my core things of me as a philosopher is like fuck the mountain philosopher. Like it's so
Okay.
easy to find peace when you fuck off from society.
Yeah.
You're like on some mountain or some monastery, which is you and a bunch of other monks meditating. That's not enlightenment. You have to
No.
be in the dirt, in the craziness of life,
Yeah.
like, and then achieve it. That's the goal. Like that's real enlightenment. So,
Okay.
yeah, I guess like because I could have a peaceful life. I could just forsake the material world and all the troubles.
You could be a Buddhist monk.
Yeah, it was like, what's the point? Like, if that was the point, all the mess wouldn't exist. Like, somehow we have to figure out the mess. Like,
So wait. So your heroes have been wizards.
yeah, I'm
Okay.
wizards.
Talk to me about that. What does that mean?
The sage archetype has always been my
The
like,
sage archetype. Okay.
because like
Okay.
at a very young age, I watched the Disney Sword in the Stone with Merlin
Wow. Okay.
and hooked. So like other kids want like, oh, I want to be like strong or like I want to be tech smart. Like I always wanted to be a wizard. Like that was something about like the subtle, not even just like big Harry Potter style magic, like subtle magic.
Yeah.
Like having such an understanding that you could make magic happen and it wouldn't seem like magic.
You wanted quiet wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Or at
Quiet
least,
wisdom.
or like a depth of understanding that allowed me to like play in the world.
Okay. Okay. See, I wanted when I my heroes when I was a kid were hero characters. The people who went out and fought the good fight and won the battles and stuff like that and got the girl in the end. So maybe that's where my desire for an interesting life comes from. And you know what? I see now do you have a peaceful life or
Okay,
do you have an interesting
okay.
life?
I said wizards, not monks, because here's the thing: wizards
Yeah.
are notorious for sticking their noses in other people's business.
Okay, okay. Fair
They-
enough.
They stay out of the picture for the most part, and then they'll find a hero and be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is time for something interesting to happen." Right? Gandalf goes and
Okay.
finds a hobbit. Merlin goes and finds orphaned boy. Like they come out of their like little wizard tower, and they're like, "Time for something interesting."
Did you come out of your wizard tower and find me? Is that what this is?
Yeah, basically, that's what that was kind of the premise of the podcast. Is
Oh
like
my
to
god!
get
No
out
one
and
told me. No one told me that.
well, I'm in my little wizard den, so
Exactly.
I
Is
can't
that
afford.
ivy you have in the background there? Is
Uh-huh.
that what that is?
Yep. Because otherwise it feels like a dungeon, and I don't want it to feel like a dungeon.
No, no. See, it's like you're broadcasting from the library at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, I did the TikTok post or not TikTok, Twitter post about like the stories thing, and and the next episode's gonna come out for us. We had a guy on, Alex the Pretty Good,
Alex the Pretty Good.
And him and I got into kind of like a heated discussion about how effective stories are at changing culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he might be right ultimately,
Okay.
because he was big on like, yeah, it definitely affects culture, stuff like that. And yeah, I see that. Um, but it's always weird to me that like we have all these stories of heroes and doing the right thing and life lessons, but the world is still mostly a mess.
Yo, yeah.
So it's like, how much? Which is my post was like, how much are we really getting? Like, how much of it is just us being entertained, and how much of it is actually like soaking in? Because
Yeah.
if even over 50% was soaking in, wouldn't everybody that's exposed to all these stories be like great people? Like the if they were as effective as we hope they'd be.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, and what his take was that that they
I
are effective,
I
that they're
was
not effective.
I was being petty because like I want them to be
Yeah.
powerful stories. I should never see somebody wearing a Superman shirt being a douchebag. Like
Yes.
that shouldn't be able to happen. That was basically my frustration.
Yeah.
How can people be exposed to these stories and then walk away and do things contrary to the lessons they should have learned?
Well, it depends on if you think that people are fundamentally good or not.
Yeah, that's one of those tricky
It
ones.
dives into a deeper question of a how are people fundamentally good, and at this stage in the world with media being what it is, if you're sitting there watching something, how much of it are you absorbing really?
Yeah, and
Or like,
this
are you absorbing it or are you just watching it?
yeah,
Because
and
that's the thing. Like George Carlin had a bit, or it wasn't a bit. It was just something that he said in a special where he was talking about kids learning how to read, and it's like kids who want to learn to read are going to learn to read. It's that kids, as opposed to emphasizing that kids who should be taught to learn how to read, kids should be taught to learn how to question everything that they read.
hmm,
So it's a matter of like not just absorbing content and absorbing literature, absorbing television, whatever. It's a matter of being able to critically think about it.
and the
And,
fundamental part of that is being able to ask good questions.
yes. And and are you the kind of person, and how many people do we have in the world who are willing to ask those questions and kind of lift those weights?
Well, it's the societal pressure from a very young age is to not ask those questions, both from the authority figures and from your peer
Mm-hmm.
group.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So
discouraged, unfortunately.
yeah, exactly. And that's one of those things that you would hope. I would hope that that I'm raising my girls to not be that kind of person, but I think it's one of those things that kind of you learn as you get older, and you look back, oh, I should maybe not do that. I should maybe start to quit. Hopefully if you're in the right circumstances, but you also get these people who are asked questions by, say, reporters, and they give some BS answer, and the reporter asks, well, where did you learn that? And they said, well, from the media. And it's like, well, which is kind of the equivalent of saying, where did you read that? On a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. It's people need to, and you know what? I'm to an extent I'm guilty of this too. I just wish that people were more awake, I guess, and
En-
maybe the word. Go ahead.
the word awake has been a little tainted. Engaged.
Are you thinking awake means woke?
Yeah, because like this is one of those funny things, right? So woke has always been like a left of the spectrum thing,
Yes.
but it used to be in like the term like waking up and woke came in response to 9/11, the concept of
Mm-hmm.
like maybe our government's doing shady stuff, like the
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street movement. Like woke was
Mhm.
like anti-corporate, like let's
Yeah.
build communities, and it shifted to something very different.
Yeah. It's in the last several years, it became about, I guess, political correctness. Am I
And
thinking of the right thing?
yeah, and what's weird is like the conservative group had always hated the woke movement because it was like a progressive, let's change the system, let's help the communities, like
Yeah.
um it was progressive. So
Mm-hmm.
they always like didn't like it, but then they started like really harping on the like political correctness, the identity elements of it, and then a portion of the left like leaned into that version of the woke
Mm-hmm.
rather than being like, no, 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 we're talking about like political corruption, lobbyists, like
Yeah.
bankers, like um,
Issues.
yeah, like meat and potatoes issues.
Yeah.
But somehow like they took up the thing that they were being put like caricatured as,
Yeah. They became the caricature that they were being portrayed
which
as.
is just weird to me.
Yeah. It's
And it's
you
and the freedom of speech flip thing is definitely the weirdest because like I grew up as a '90s like new like neo punk or whatever, so it's
yeah.
like me having to like as a middle schooler like a CD that had like explicit content was like ho ho
Mm-hmm.
like I'm a
Yeah.
rebel like free speech and like free language and art and creation, and it was the like conservative religious group that's like no like Pokemon's the devil, D&D's the devil,
Yeah. There you
rock and
go.
roll's the devil, like
That's the problem.
we have to censor all this, and then all of a sudden like flipped to like no 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 you can't like offend people or like insult people, like we need to stop that. It's like
Yeah.
like
Which is which?
it's from both sides now. Like,
Yeah.
but the conservatives now are trying to be like we're the free speech people, and it's like you weren't just 20 years ago, man.
No.
Like the concept that Marilyn Manson existed as a form of entertainment to you meant that the Antichrist had arrived. Like it was a big
Oh
deal
God.
that a guy would pretend
Yeah.
to be, wear all this makeup and talk
The
about
androgynous.
yeah, yeah, that's a word. People are like, oh, I can't understand this like male and female thing. And androgynous. There was a term for that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I
and but so you're thinking not so much awake but engaged.
yeah. So like the problem is we need to be engaged because it's the like you said, if somebody like is asking a question, they give like a canned response.
Yeah.
If you ask a question to get deeper, they'll either circle back to the canned response,
Mm-hmm.
short circuit, or if they've engaged in the thing that they're saying, they'll be able to
Yeah.
But what you'll find is people typically don't, not, I guess
People
typically.
don't unpack.
Yeah, but there's a lot of not unpacking stuff.
So how do you get people to unpack? How do you push people to become engaged? Is that the big question?
This is the horse to water problem.
Yeah, there you go.
Because when I was young, I thought, nah, if you just like ask them the good questions and you put the truth in front of them and all that stuff, it would do it. No, you just upset people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Exactly.
so somehow there has to be like a cultural shift.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's even possible. Some part of me thinks that humans just aren't built like that.
You know what? I'm inclined to think like that, but you know what? Maybe it's me being. If you go through your days thinking like that, you kind of become, oh man, you know. So I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that I've been exposed to all these hero stories, but you kind of have to hope for the opposite, for the other end of the spectrum. That you can make the horse drink, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm an optimist, so I think and hope it's moving that way. But the thing is, it's harder. Like that's what I realized as I matured. Is you're asking people to
Mm-hmm.
do something really hard.
Oh yeah. No, like I
Speaking
said,
of like, speaking
it's
of
hard to lift those weights, man.
because speaking of like wives and stuff, I'm very big against plastic.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
so that comes up a lot where it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm like, okay, you say it's not a big deal in this instant, but this instant becomes another one and another one, and like that's the curse of being engaged. Is like every time, like I'll be at a vending machine, and I'm like, oh, like I'll have this, and then like there's a part of
Yeah.
me that's like, it's in a plastic bottle. Like, do you really want to have a plastic bottle right now? Like,
I was gonna
so
say I'm drinking Gatorade out of a plastic bottle. Are you gonna come beat me up?
no, because again, one of the things I've learned is like I would not wish my mental process on anyone because it's awful.
Mm. Well,
Again,
wait. Well, so what? Why plastic? What is it about plastic? Talk. I,
so
I think I know the answer, but tell me anyway.
yeah, so there's two levels of it. There's the macro and micro. Micro level, ironically, microplastics.
There you go.
Macro level is like oil. People think like, oh, like, all oil companies like gas for your cars and stuff like that. Plastic is oil.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've you're good if you haven't found it yet. I've teased about people talking about climate change with like usually the like those Funko Pop figures
Yeah.
like in their backs. So they have just a wall of like pressed oil,
Yeah.
and as well as like
Mm-hmm.
and it'd be my dream that those kinds of figures would be made out of like wood or resin
Yeah.
because I only recently found out resin is plant based. I thought it was another plastic. The
Oh
more,
boy.
the more you know. Um, but yeah, it's tricky, right? Because it's like I don't know. It's hard. That's the thing is it's hard. You're asking people to do a hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's already a lot of hard things about life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't know. There's a theory that yeah, it's the old axiom like things get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
That we're just going to keep repeating the cycle of things getting bad, and each time it gets bad, we'll get to the brink, and as we pull back, we get better, and then get to the brink
Mm-hmm.
and pull back and get better. The fear is one time we'll just
Yeah.
over the brink, and that's the big fear
It's
with nuclear stuff is
Mhm.
we've made it a lot easier to get over the brink,
Yeah. That's true.
but which maybe that puts more pressure on us to get better at these things. But
Man, oh wow. See, this is why you're the smart one.
I don't know about smart, thoughtful. I'm a thoughtful one.
Well, you know what? Hey, thoughtful paves the way for smart, my friend. That's how it should work, at least.
Yeah. We're coming up on the 2 hour mark, and historically with this program, I need to start saying this in the beginning of the episode. I just get so excited to talk to people. Historically, at the 2 hour mark, the amount of video it's retaining to upload
Okay.
versus the live stream starts to conflict.
Okay.
But yeah, so didn't mention what your project. I like the word project, Prometheus project, but that's actually because we are trying to do something that isn't a podcast. The podcast is just our foot in the door. Either way,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
your project is Comic Book Chronicles
Comic Book Chronicles.
on TikTok and YouTube and Twitter.
Comic Book Chronicles on TikTok. You can find me on YouTube and Comic Book Chronicles Rob, same as Instagram. Comic Book Chronicles Rob. I talk about comic books mostly, but there's geek culture mixed in there. There's my life mixed in there. It's my project, my brand, whatever you want to call it.
Are you gonna start putting the interviews on Spotify?
You might have to teach me how to do that.
Super easy.
Okay. All right. Well, then I have another piece of homework. Then I have to have you teach me about Spotify.
So I've got to watch the Ninja Turtles, and I got to figure out how to stop having the Inspector Kickstarter show up in pounds.
Oh, does it do that?
For me, yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Maybe it's euros.
I'll put you in touch with the guy who with the guys who do the inspectors, man. I'm sure they'd love to talk to you.
I would be super up for it.
Go for it, man. Yeah, they'd put you on the show, or you put them in my spot on the show, man. Talk to them.
Yeah, basically.
Jared and David.
Yeah, I'd love to hear like about the influences and how they play with those ideas. Because the way you described it sold me on it. I was like, this sounds fantastic. Now I have,
You know,
but I can't just get one issue. I have to get. Well, how many issues are there now?
well, here's the thing. It's not a single issue comic book. You have the Inspectors Volume 1, which is about the length of 4 standard issues.
Okay.
And then coming soon, you have the Inspectors Volume 2. Now, they say that that's where it's wrapping up. So it's going to be, it looks like pretty self-contained, but they're working on something else in the David and Jared. So I don't know what that is. I wasn't at liberty to ask, but hopefully it's in the same vein.
Hmm. So is it always sold in the single volume, or can you get the like chapters?
Always in the single volume.
Okay.
I'll let you borrow my volume if you want.
I like books. I'm gonna get my own for. Man, I keep forgetting that my camera's reversed.
Sorry, you're all good, man. You're all good. No, hey, either way, man. If we can sell another volume, let's do it. And like I said, I'll put you in touch with them.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, weird thing that like my mine and my co-host personality has to like shine through super hard because like we built our Twitter for this podcast or for this project, and I went on and I followed science people and philosophers, and then I started like interacting on Twitter a little bit, and then immediately it's like, ooh, you like Dungeons and Dragons and comics. I was like, well, yeah, but that's not what I was trying to do right
Yeah,
now.
there you go. Mhm.
That's how we ended up with a comic book author and tabletop RPG. Ooh, okay. If you do no other homework, do you listen to podcasts regularly?
Somewhat.
Okay. If you do nothing else, listen to Dying Five.
Dying 5.
Yep. All spelled out. So DIEINGFIVE. Dying Five. It's a tabletop podcast,
Okay.
but it is one of the best story mediums, like story
Okay.
things I've ever come across. I try and get it out there to people. Probably because I need people to talk to about it. Because like there's things developing, and I don't know what to
Okay.
talk to about it. That I'm...
Dying 5.
It's super good. So yeah, if you just want like a fun thing to like listen to,
Okay.
highly recommend. If you do nothing else, do that because they're smaller creators and it's awesome. It's
Okay.
fantastic.
Excellent. I'll check them out.
Lots of plugs in this.
No, not a problem. Not a problem.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I hope you'll have me again sometime.
And I mean, we live within walking distance. We should actually hang out sometime.
There you go, man. Let's do it.
All right, and button. Where's the button?